Hello and welcome back to From the Workshop. I'm your host, Brandon Hart, and we are here in the NimbleLink Nerd Lair. This time, I'd like to build on a previous video. So we did a video a little while ago about how to provision cellular service for your device. And in that video, we touched on how to find your MEID for some of the CDMA devices. Finding myself here. There we go. All right, on the CDMA devices, we touched on how to find the IMEI and what your ICC ID or the SIM ID is. We talked about how to get in and provision the service in the modem itself by sending AT commands where necessary. But we didn't really get into how to actually obtain that cellular service in the first place. We didn't really get into what options you might be presented with when it is time to pick a cellular service plan. So we'd like to touch on that a little bit more, go a little deeper into that idea this time. And if you haven't seen the previous video, then please do check it out. It'll give you some complementary information that goes along with this one. You can find that information, of course, right up there. And with that, let's jump in. So just fundamentally, you really have two basic decisions to make when you're trying to activate one of the NimbleLink Skywire modems. Really, it is how are you going to set up your service? Are you going to work directly with a cellular service carrier or MVNO? Or do you want something that is, well, quicker, faster, self-service, like a NimbleLink account? You are free to choose whatever you like. You are in no way tied to using our NimbleLink account. However, most developers who are just getting started may not necessarily have a relationship with a carrier, may not have negotiated pricing, may not have an account set up, may not have the ability to turn on service as soon as they get their hardware. So we set up this NimbleLink account to provide a quicker and easier way to light up, a few development units or full production runs of tens of thousands of units, so that it's just an easier way of getting your service going. So you can find that, by the way, at go.nimbelink.com. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a bit, but that is a good way to, just get the information right up front. Okay, so now let's say that you've decided to pick one or the other, direct carrier account or using our NimbleLink account. Now you have a decision to make. You're going to be presented with options. How much data are you going to use? How much SMS or text messaging are you going to use on any of your devices? That's going to make a big difference as far as the plan you sign up for. And I will offer this advice. Always guess high. And the reason I say that is because, number one, once a device is already kind of in the field as a production device and is operating as normal, you're going to have a good feel for how much data is coming in. You can see how much data you'll have on a month-to-month basis. It tends to be a little bit more steady, a little bit more predictable, whereas in the development stage, it's really hard to tell. You're hitting these things and trying to figure out how things work and respond, and can you send data here? Can you send data there? What happens if you try to initiate a connection into a device? Those things all tend to drive your data usage higher. You're also not optimized yet for sending the data through the cellular network. So you may be sending a lot more data than you need to and a lot more frequently than you need to. The other thing I'll throw out there too is, for those of you who aren't familiar with cellular networks and estimating your data, it's a little different than like Wi-Fi or landline types of data transmissions that you might be used to, where you really are only concerned with the payloads for the individual packets that you're sending. So if you're just sending a temperature reading and that's it, then all you really need to worry about is the payload amount. In a cellular network, all of the data that transfers over that cellular network is billable. And that means your payload but also all of the packet, the headers, the overhead associated with sending that payload across the cellular network. All of it's billable. So it's something to keep in mind when you're trying to estimate how much data you're going to use. You can always back it down, scale it back down again after you figure out that you're not using as much as you initially thought you would, but it's painful to have to pay overages. So try to avoid that if you possibly can. By the way, I did a separate from the workshop video on this idea of sending data over a cellular network and trying to estimate how much data you're using. That video can be found right up here as well. So head on over and check that out if you haven't already. It'll help you as you try to figure out how much data to set up, sign up for and estimate you're going to use. Okay, the other thing that is going to be asked of you, besides standard account information and things like that, is what type of IP address do you want? Very simple question. Very complex potential answers and ramifications that are of whatever answer you might provide. The default generally from most carriers is to assign you a public dynamic IP address. And so essentially it's going to be a public address. So it's on the public internet, it's visible on the public internet, that changes every time you have a new data session. So if you end a session and start a new session, you get a different IP address assigned to your device that is generally a public IP address. So just to visualize some of this, here is your cellular device. Here is the radio tower, and that is connected into the core network. Core network. And then from there is the public internet. And this could be it could be a cloud, could be a location, whatever. But this is the endpoint where that data is going to end up. So again, that could be a server, that could be inside of your own network, that could be managed hosted server, somewhere, that kind of thing. But basically, these are the main pieces of everything that that goes into sending your data to where it's going to end up. So from the device to the endpoint, wherever that may be, and then these are the pieces that kind of sit in the middle. So if you have a public dynamic IP address, that essentially means that you are transmitting up to the cell tower and then down through this core network or connection into the carrier's core network. And then from here are being dumped into the public internet with an IP address that is visible from the public internet. And then you traverse the public internet to get down into the endpoint, wherever that may be. So this is a standard public IP address setup. This may seem obvious to you, but bear with me. There are some complications that come into this here shortly. So public dynamic IP address, visible IP address, but every time your device connects into the core network, it's assigned a new IP address. So you never really know what IP address is going to be assigned to the device. So what happens if you want to, from your endpoint, initiate a connection into that device? Well, if you don't know what the IP address of that device is, it's going to be really hard for you to reach out to it. So what you can do is, instead of a public dynamic IP address, the default assigned by the carrier, you can request a public static IP address, an address that is always assigned to your device, is dedicated to your device and never changes. So in that case, you still have sort of the same flow, except this IP address here is known and is also visible to the public. Through the internet, it is visible. It can be hacked, it can be pinged, it can be attacked, your device can be port scanned, all that fun stuff. And by the way, I mentioned earlier that all the data that traverses the cellular network is billable, so is all of that attack data. So if you have a 1 megabyte plan or a 250 kilobyte plan because you don't plan to transmit very often, but you have a public IP address and somebody from the internet starts attacking your device, that's all going across the cellular network. It is all reaching your device and it is all billable. So that could be nasty. NimbleLink's best suggestion to you is public static IPs are bad. Don't use them. Don't use them. Not saying you are bad if you use a public static IP, but please don't do it if you can at all avoid it, because it can get you into some serious trouble. So what are the alternatives? Well, obviously the alternative to a public address is a private address. So let's talk about private. There are two options for private addresses, essentially. One is to use the NimbleLink private network, which is, by the way, the default that we put everybody into. We put them all into that private network. And what happens in the private network is your device from the Verizon core network, when your device initiates a session, it will be assigned a private IP address. It's essentially one of our private IP addresses that is assigned to your device. So using that private IP, your device will transmit over the network into the core network, and then because of the way that NimbleLink's account is set up, we actually will from the core network will NAT that connection out and present a public IP to the public internet that is not the private IP for your device. So your device still has access to the public internet, but the IP address for your device is private and not visible. So therefore, you cannot, from the public internet, attack that device. Certainly not very easily, because the address is simply not visible. From there, again, you're on the public internet, so everything goes back through the standard path to the endpoint. So that's the NimbleLink account. It's kind of the best mix of security with your private IP and public access to the internet. So you can go out anywhere on the internet that you want without fear of your device being able to be, hacked back in the same way. The last option is if you really want to make sure that you're going to have a lot of devices, you want to make sure that they're all protected, instead of using our NimbleLink private network, you can actually work with the network themselves, the carriers themselves, to establish a secured, dedicated private network just for you and your account and your devices. Small setup fee associated with this, varies by the carrier, but essentially what they're going to do is the same general idea as the NimbleLink system. They're going to assign your private IP addresses down to the device. So using those private IPs, your device will communicate into the core network, but from there, they will be routed through a secured tunnel, a VPN, into a dedicated endpoint. So there is no visibility from the public internet. There is really no touching the public internet, because you're going through this secured VPN tunnel to the endpoint, wherever that may be. Now this does have some IT requirements associated with it. Some of the carriers will require that you have a hardware VPN appliance. Some of them will offer you some other options as well, but this is a dedicated end-to-end, point-to-point VPN tunnel with only 2 points of access, here and then from the core network, or technically down into your device. So those are your options. I hope that's clear enough, but if you have more questions, you can certainly reach out to your carrier or reach out to us, and we'll try to explain this a little bit better. Our email address is workshop@nimbelink.com. Love to walk you through this and how it applies to your specific scenario, but this is kind of the way we offer the options as far as what kind of IP addresses you may want to have. Okay, so let's say you've figured all of this out. You know that you want to have the NimbleLink private network so that you get your private IP address assigned to your device, but still have access to the full public internet. How do you get set up with service then? Well, we've got a self-service interface, a self-service website, which is located at go.nimbelink.com. That's here. And you can go there. You can very easily set up an account, provide your account information, and then simply provide the ICC ID, the SIM card number, and the IMEI from your modem, or alternatively for the CDMA devices out there, the MEID, pick a plan, and activate. Very simple, very easy. You then have a fully managed account by NimbleLink. So we're the ones that actually manage the relationship with the carrier in that case for you, so you don't have to deal with it. We also can provide better technical support. Since it's our account, we have the ability to go in and make sure everything is working properly for you if you have any issues with the line of service. We also will offer, there's obviously standard pricing available through the self-service website, but we also offer full custom pricing for large, high volume types of opportunities where something a little bit more custom might make sense. So can be a nice option. Again, you kind of get this, you get the ease of use and the self-service and all that. Okay, completely optional, but can be pretty nice, and a lot of people have found it convenient. We provide access to Verizon, to Vodafone, to Sprint, to T-Mobile, and to AT&T. So a lot of different options that cover both here domestic in the US and around the world. Also, that's enough about that. For more information, again, check out go.nimbelink.com. We have the pricing posted there, so if you have questions about how much 5 megabytes would run you, that pricing is posted, and you can refer to that anytime you want to. Okay, so that's running through your options in terms of how you can get set up, either direct with a carrier or with us. The questions you might be asked about how much data and how much SMS, and then what type of IP address you want and what the kind of the ramifications and all of that are as far as that choice. And then lastly, you can go to go.nimbelink.com and get everything set up very quickly. The SIM cards and everything are available through DigiKey currently. So you can buy the hardware, buy the SIM card, and be off and running, activating the device on the website. I hope that's helpful. It gives a little bit more information than the previous video did, kind of about the process of getting things set up in the first place. But if you have questions, let us know. And until next time, thank you very much for watching. Please like the video if you found it helpful. Leave us some comments, subscribe to the channel, and shoot us an email at workshop@nimbelink.com if you've got questions, comments, or just want to let us know how we're doing. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time on From the Workshop. Have fun building.